Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Hiba, and here on my channel I discuss recent missing person cases. If you're into that type of content and want to follow along, go ahead and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. This is actually my second time filming this, so just bear with me. Like I said, I usually focus on recent missing person cases. However, I've been thinking about getting into some older, potentially cold cases. The reason for this is that since so much time has passed, I feel that anybody involved or witnesses would be more likely to come forward. I also think that getting fresh eyes and a fresh perspective can always be beneficial, especially as new details emerge. With that being said, today I want to talk about Luke Stout. As I mentioned, unlike my other cases, this one is not as recent. However, I've had several of you reach out to me and ask me to take a look at this case, so of course I am. I've also talked to Luke's family members and want to help raise awareness about his story. Before we dive into the details, there's some background information that I think you should know. Despite this case being somewhat older, there are still no answers as to what happened to Luke. His family has been searching and advocating for him since he went missing, especially his mother, Elizabeth, who he cared for before he went missing. Elizabeth was very active and vocal on social media. She went to town hall meetings and put together gatherings and talked to so many officials and did so much more. In a post she made, Elizabeth writes, "Lukey, I will never give up. I will stand up and speak for you with everything I have left in me. This has and will always be. This is the promise I made to you from day one, and I will keep it, no matter where it leads me. I will not stop until you are found and/or we have the answers to the questions we seek and everyone involved pays for their part. My heart, my soul, my blood, my son, I love you, Luke, and you know you can count on Mama." And Elizabeth really did mean every word. She fought for Luke with everything in her until she passed away in 2020 from stage 4 cancer in her lungs, gallbladder, spine, lymphoid, and liver. She never found out what happened to her son. Throughout this video, I will be including more posts and messages from Elizabeth. To help continue her efforts, I want to let you know about a Facebook group that I've recently started, along with some of Luke's family members and the Criminal Elements group. I'll leave a link for that in the description if you're interested in joining us. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. On July 18th, 2012, Luke Stout, who was 24 at the time, went missing in Buckhannon, West Virginia. Luke was last seen leaving his home on Hickory Flat Road between 3 to 5 p.m. At the time, he was mostly using his bike for transportation. I believe that he did have a car, but he hadn't paid his insurance, so he couldn't drive. In the days leading up to his disappearance, the handlebars of the bike that he was using to get around broke. As a result, Luke left that bike in town, and he planned to retrieve it and to fix it so that he could get back to using it. A friend of his, Dylan, agreed to help him fix the bike in exchange for another bike that Luke had, which also needed some repairs. This can be kind of confusing since there are two broken bikes involved. Essentially, Luke abandoned the bike that he normally used in town because the handlebars broke. However, he had another bike, a green one, which also needed some repairs. He was going to give that green bike to Dylan in exchange for Dylan's help in fixing Luke's normal bike, which he had left in town because of the handlebars. On the afternoon of the 18th, Dylan called Luke to let him know that he was sending someone over to pick him up. According to his mother, Luke did not know who this person was, but agreed to wait at the end of his driveway with the green bike. Prior to leaving, Luke told his mother and brother that he loves them and that he would see them later that day. He then headed out and went down the driveway to wait for his ride. This home has a really long driveway, and that's important to mention because it means that Luke's family didn't and couldn't see him getting into any vehicles or going in any direction. I'll include an image of the home here so that you can see how long this driveway is. Despite what he said, Luke failed to return home, and as a result, his family reported him as missing. Luke is not the type of person to just up and leave. Like I mentioned, he had been caring for his sick mother, and his family was so alarmed when he didn't return that very same day that they reported him missing. Not long after, the green bike that Luke had left home with was found near a dumpster in a trailer park. I've seen some sources state that it was behind a pharmacy, either Rite Aid or CVS. His brothers were the ones to find the bike, and of course they notified police since Luke was missing at the time. Unfortunately, however, the bike was never processed or examined for prints or anything like that, so it's not really clear who left the bike there. It's also not clear if Dylan ever worked on the bike. However, as far as I know, it was still broken, so it doesn't appear that he did. According to family, police instructed Luke's brothers to simply take the bike home and wait for Luke to return. Logically, the first person to ask about Luke's whereabouts would be Dylan, the person that he was supposedly meeting that day. Not much is known about Dylan or about the person that he allegedly sent to pick Luke up. However, as far as I know, Dylan claims that Luke either never showed up or that he showed up and then left. But if Luke did show up, wasn't it the plan that Dylan would take the green bike, which was found at a trailer park near a dumpster? Dylan's story isn't really clear, and he might not be the most trustworthy source, but I'll get more into that later. Even if Luke did meet up with Dylan, what happened after, and why didn't he go home? It's been almost a decade, and there hasn't been any signs of him. Obviously, we don't know what happened that day, and Luke isn't here to tell us. However, his actions prior to his disappearance may give us some clues. Before he went missing, Luke went to the police to file a report that someone was threatening him. He told authorities that a man known as Chino had threatened him because of Luke's involvement with Chino's wife, Kelly. However, police didn't really take this allegation seriously, and I'm not even sure if they took his statement or filed an official report. The reason for this is because apparently Luke was intoxicated at the time that he wanted to report this incident. I've also seen rumors that Luke made this allegation after he was taken into the station for something. Regardless, this isn't right, and Luke's safety should have been taken seriously whether he was intoxicated or not. I'm going to include a post from his mother here regarding the matter. We went to ask for answers why, before my son vanished, that the city police refused to take my son, Luke Stout's statement of Chino Rodolfo Villagomez Correa, holding him by gunpoint, pressing the gun barrel on Luke's forehead, leaving the barrel marks on Luke's forehead, as well as putting it in Luke's mouth while saying he was going to blow his brains out. There's also a picture of Liz holding a sign that reads, "If the city or troopers would have taken a statement from Luke last year when he was threatened, I believe he would still be here today." Unfortunately, Luke didn't try to report this incident again. That doesn't surprise me considering the way he wasn't taken seriously, but I really wish that he would have gone in again. I also wonder if there's another possible explanation as to why Luke wasn't taken seriously. Is it possible that there's some sort of connection or interest in protecting Chino? But who is this Chino guy and why threaten Luke? Chino's real name is Rodolfo Villagomez Correa, but I'll continue to refer to him as Chino throughout this video. At the time of Luke's disappearance, Chino was in his early 30s. He and his family operated a Mexican restaurant in the area. This restaurant has since closed, and that's probably because of what Chino did in 2012. In January of 2012, which is the same year that Luke disappeared, Chino put a hit out on a 29-year-old man named Josh Oberg. Josh went missing in late January and would remain missing for approximately 6 months until his remains were discovered in a shallow grave in July. Oddly, the discovery was made just 5 days after Luke vanished. Like Luke, Josh was allegedly having an affair with Chino's wife. After learning of the affair, Chino hired 2 of his wife's relatives to have a talk with Josh. He basically told these 2 men that he wanted Josh dead. After all of this came to light, Chino ultimately pled guilty to second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder for his involvement. He agreed to a plea agreement and was sentenced 10 to 40 years for the second-degree charge and 1 to 5 years for the conspiracy charge. The terms are to be served consecutively, and Chino is eligible for parole after serving 10 years. It's worth mentioning that these weren't the only charges brought against Chino around this time. In 2013, he also pled guilty to being in the country illegally and to possessing 16 farms. For these charges, he received an additional sentence of approximately 4 years. The additional 4 years are to be served consecutive to his other sentence. 5 years later, in 2018, Chino filed a petition for habeas corpus. Essentially, he wanted to challenge the legality of his sentence, which could result in a lesser sentence or even in him getting out. He eventually dropped this application and claimed that it was in his best interest to serve his time. In my opinion, the only reason he dropped it is to avoid the possibility of added time. According to the West Virginia Department of Corrections, Chino is eligible for parole next year in 2023. I believe that the parole hearing date is in July, and honestly, that's terrifying. I hope that he isn't granted parole and that he stays incarcerated where he belongs. His projected release date, if he doesn't get paroled, is in January of 2035, which honestly isn't that far away. But back to his connection to Luke's case. We know that Josh was killed because of his relationship with Chino's wife. Is it possible that the same thing happened to Luke, who, as we know, was also involved with Chino's wife? I think it's completely possible, especially considering the fact that Luke was threatened by Chino beforehand. There are even some Facebook posts made by Luke that mention being threatened, which I will include here. Reading these posts is very sad and even a little eerie because we know that Luke isn't here today. This post was made just 2 months before Luke disappeared, and it states, "Sick of all the effing threats." Someone then says, "They're not going to do anything, only run their mouths. Don't let them get you down. It's a waste of time to get upset. You are a good person to have to put up with a moron's crap." Then Luke responds, "LOL, you have no idea." Luke then makes another post saying, "I will see whoever I effing want," and another one that says, "F with me." So he doesn't list any names or name anyone specific, but it's clear that these messages were directed at someone or multiple persons and that somebody was threatening him. Approximately 6 months went by before Josh's remains were found. Maybe Chino believed that he had gotten away with it and was in the clear, and so he decided to put a hit out again, but this time on Luke. Maybe something was planned for the day that he disappeared. You might be surprised or not to learn that Kelly has a cousin named Dylan. Could this be the same Dylan that Luke was planning on meeting the day that he disappeared? If you recall, Dylan allegedly sent someone to pick Luke up. Who did he send, and is it possible that he was setting Luke up? As we know, Chino hired Kelly's relatives for Josh's murder. Is it possible that he hired another relative of hers, potentially Dylan, to lure Luke out? Absolutely. It's also possible that he did something to Luke himself. In fact, a woman came forward claiming to know that Chino is involved. I'm going to call this woman Stacy for privacy reasons. Stacy had served some time, and while incarcerated, her cellmate told her that she and her husband, along with Chino and Kelly, were all present for Luke's murder. Luke's mother asked this woman, Stacy, to make an official report to police so that they could have this information, and I believe that she eventually did. Despite this statement, however, authorities took months to question Kelly. It's not clear what really came of this, or if Kelly denied the allegation or her involvement. However, it doesn't seem like anything really came of it because nothing has been done. Regardless, Chino having some sort of involvement in Luke's disappearance is the most likely theory, in my opinion. I don't believe that Luke would have gone away on his own. Why would he, and where would he go? Of course, we don't know if Luke was struggling with something internally or if he had been going through a rough patch. However, I believe that he still intended to come home, even if this was the case. He even said it himself that he'd be back later that night. It's not easy to disappear off the face of the earth, even if you wanted to. It's also been nearly a decade and there hasn't been any sign of him. As we know, his mother died fighting for him, and if he was still out there, I don't think that he would have let her suffer like that. Personally, I like to believe that Luke and his mother have reunited in heaven. Buckhannon is a small town with approximately 5,000 residents. Someone knows something, whether they witnessed it themselves or whether they heard it from someone. It's time that this person comes forward so that his family can finally have closure. It was his mother's dying wish. If you have any information, please contact the number in the description below. As always, you can also reach me at hibachai.yt@gmail.com. Luke is 5'7" and weighs 120 pounds. He has brown hair and brown eyes. At the time of his disappearance, Luke was wearing a black t-shirt, a light jacket, jeans, and black sneakers. He also has a tattoo on his shoulder, I believe, and I will include a picture of that. Thank you so much for listening to Luke's story, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I know this was kind of a longer video, and I really appreciate you being here. Don't forget that you can join the Facebook group, which is linked in my description below, and I hope to see you in my next one.